Picture the two people who once promised each other forever, sitting across a courtroom table instead of a dinner table, arguing over furniture instead of finishing each other's sentences. That's where this story begins. And by the end of it, you'll understand how a wedding on the other side of the world managed to do what 20 years of marriage counseling couldn't. Stick around, because the moment that changes everything isn't the wedding at all. It's something one of them says by accident, half drunk under string lights, that neither of them can take back. Here's the thing about David and Georgia. They don't hate each other because they stopped loving each other. They hate each other because they remember exactly how much they did. And it's easier to be angry than to sit with that kind of loss. Years after their divorce, they've built entire lives designed to never intersect. He's a laid-back architect, content with simplicity. She's a sharp, successful gallery owner who's rebuilt herself from the ground up. Different cities, different partners, different philosophies on happiness. The only thread still tying them together is their daughter, Lily. So when that phone rings and Lily announces she's getting married in Bali to a man she met 3 weeks ago, it doesn't just surprise them, it terrifies them. Because they know exactly how this story goes. They lived it. And now they're being asked to smile, fly across the world, and watch their daughter walk toward the same cliff they fell off of. Ask yourself, if you watched your child about to repeat your biggest mistake, would you stay quiet? Or would you do something reckless to stop it? Neither of them will admit it, but the second they see each other again, bickering before they've even left the airport, something old flickers back to life. It's not romance. Not yet. It's rhythm, the specific involuntary way two people who once knew each other completely fall right back into old jokes and old irritations, like muscle memory. This is where the film quietly plants its thesis. Proximity doesn't just reopen wounds, it reopens intimacy too. You can spend years convincing yourself you're over someone, and then one shared eye roll at 30,000 feet undoes it. Neither David nor Georgia notices it happening, but you will. And that's the fun of watching this unfold. You're a few steps ahead of two people who are the last to see what's obvious to everyone else on screen. They land united by exactly one goal: stop the wedding. What they don't realize yet is that sabotaging their daughter's happiness might end up repairing their own. Bali doesn't just look beautiful in this film, it functions as a character. Lush, slow, sun-drenched, it's the opposite of the cold, transactional world David and Georgia left behind. And that contrast matters. This isn't just a backdrop for a wedding. It's a space designed to strip away defenses. People fall in love in places like this because places like this make you forget to protect yourself. When they finally meet Giddy, Lily's fiancé, something inconvenient happens. He's wonderful, warm, grounded, clearly devoted to her. He runs his family's seaweed farm. He's patient with two hostile future in-laws, and he makes Lily lighter, happier, more herself. There's no villain to blame here, no easy reason to hate him, which means if David and Georgia are going to break this up, they can't do it with facts. They'll have to do it with manipulation. So they strike an uneasy truce, pretend to get along, undermine the relationship from the inside, and get their daughter on a plane home before she makes what they're convinced is a catastrophic mistake. But here's the question worth sitting with. Are they really protecting Lily? Or are they trying to rewrite their own story through her? Their plan starts working almost too well, not on Lily, but on them. Thrown together to bond with Ged's family, David and Georgia end up on a boat, then underwater, diving side by side for the first time in years. And something about being weightless, silent, stripped of language and old arguments lets them see each other without the armor. It's a clever piece of writing, actually. The film keeps engineering situations where they physically cannot fight, because fighting requires words, and these moments strip words away. Dancing, diving, drinking. Each time, the bitterness dissolves a little more, and what's underneath starts to show. Two people who were genuinely great together once, before life and ego and misunderstanding pulled them apart. You start to wonder, was their divorce really about falling out of love, or was it about two people who never learned how to fight for something instead of walking away from it? That question is about to get a lot more personal, because one night, after too much local rice wine, they do something neither of them saw coming. They sleep together, and the morning after hits differently than you'd expect from a comedy beat. There's real panic in it, real vulnerability, because for one night, they let themselves feel something they'd spent years convincing themselves was gone. And now they have to decide, was that a mistake? Or was that the truth finally catching up with them? This is where the film earns its emotional weight. It would be easy to play this purely for laughs. The awkward secret, the frantic cover-up. But underneath the comedy, there's something honest about how adults handle old feelings resurfacing at the worst possible time. They don't talk about it. They bury it, get back to the mission, and pretend it didn't crack something open. Except pretending never works for long, does it? Especially not when the person you're lying to is someone who used to know every single one of your tells. Lily isn't naive. She notices the shift in her parents almost before they do. The stolen glances, the sudden softness, the inside jokes that shouldn't still exist between two people who claim to despise each other. And when she finally confronts them, it's not with anger. It's with something more devastating. Hurt. Because she starts to suspect their sudden support of her wedding was never really support at all. It was strategy. This is the moment the film flips its own premise on its head. The people trying to stop a naive young woman from making an emotional mistake are exposed as the ones acting on impulse and unresolved feelings. Lily, the one everyone assumed was too young to know her own heart, turns out to be the most clear-eyed person in the story. It raises an uncomfortable, very human question. How many of us have tried to protect someone we love from a decision when really we were just afraid of being reminded of our own? David and Georgia are forced to look at themselves honestly for the first time in the film, and what they see isn't flattering. Guilt does something interesting to people. It either makes them defensive or it makes them honest. For once, David and Georgia choose honesty. Stripped of the plan, stripped of the excuse of saving Lily, they're finally forced to talk about the actual wreckage of their marriage. Not who was right, but what they lost and why they never fought hard enough to keep it. It's a quieter, more reflective stretch of the film, and it's arguably the emotional core of the whole story. Because underneath the tropical wedding comedy premise, this is really a film about second chances you don't get, the ones you only recognize as chances after they've already slipped away. David and Georgia aren't just grieving their marriage anymore. They're grieving the versions of themselves who loved each other without fear. So when the wedding day arrives, the real question isn't whether Lily and Geedy will get married. It's whether David and Georgia can finally stop sabotaging their own happiness the way they tried to sabotage hers. The wedding itself becomes the stage for every unresolved thread to collide at once. Lily, radiant and certain, ready to commit to a love her parents once hadn't lost. Geedy's family, warm and accepting in a way that quietly shames the bitterness David and Georgia brought with them. And somewhere in the middle of it, a decision neither of them expected to make, a choice about their own relationship that forces them to finally stop hiding behind jokes and sarcasm. Without spoiling the exact shape of what happens next, this is the moment the film has been building toward from that very first courtroom scene. Every dive, every dance, every stolen glance was leading here, and it lands not because it's unpredictable, but because it's earned. You've watched two people slowly remember who they used to be to each other. The real twist isn't a plot twist at all. It's an emotional one, and it's going to make you rethink everything you assumed about who these two people actually are underneath all that anger. By the final moments, the story isn't really about a wedding in paradise anymore. It's about the idea that love doesn't always fail because it runs out. Sometimes it just gets buried under pride, timing, and fear, waiting for the right moment to be unearthed. Lily and Geedy's wedding was never really the story. It was the catalyst. The excuse two stubborn, heartbroken people needed to finally stop performing indifference and admit what they'd never stopped feeling. What stays with you isn't the tropical scenery or the comedic bickering. It's the quieter idea, underneath it all, that the people who hurt us the most are often the same people who once made us feel the most alive, and sometimes those two truths are impossible to separate. Maybe that's why this story resonates with so many people who've loved and lost and wondered quietly what might have happened if they'd just fought a little harder, a little longer. So here's a question worth leaving you with. If you got a second chance with someone you truly loved, but lost through pride instead of a lack of love, would you take it? Let me know your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.